Welcome back, everyone, to another SlabStox 101 video. My name is Aaron, your host, and in this video, we are covering selling strategy, which is one of the most important aspects of sports cards buying and selling while you're trying to manage your portfolio. It's always easy to know which players you should be buying if you're a sports fan and you really have a good feeling about someone, or what cards you should be buying, especially after watching this YouTube series, because now you know how to go and conduct more research on your own to search out the different inserts and rookies and parallels. The harder thing is knowing when should I be selling a card, if it doubles, if it triples, if it goes up 25%, if it drops and you need to cut bait on it. It's all a very gray area and something I'm going to try to help you guys learn and implement some strategies for your card selling because it is so important. The number one thing before watching this video is you have to watch the last video with Nate because you have to know what is your risk and what is your budget. You cannot implement any selling strategies if you don't understand what is your risk in your current financial situation, especially with cards. So make sure you watch the previous video and get to know that before continuing with this video because it all kind of hinges on that. So you definitely need to know that going through this video. The first topic with your selling strategy is you need to know, are your sports cards short-term investments or long-term investments? Most people don't have the ability to just put all sports cards aside, put them in a safe, in a box, and just sit on them for 5-10 years and watch them grow in value. So many people need to focus on the short-term investments. If you are a long-term investor and you have the ability to do that, that's awesome. Put them away, and you really don't have to watch much of this video anymore until you want to sell them in 5 years. But for those short-term investors, which is most people in the sports card market who want to constantly be rotating in new inventory, selling inventory, getting new cards for their collection, this is definitely a place you want to start. So once you know that you want to be a short-term investor, which is mostly I'm talking like 3 to 6 months to 1 year of holding a card, even can be 1 year plus to 2 years. Short-term is another gray area term, but you have to know what cards you want to be designated as short-term investments versus long-term investments, because there's sometimes things that you know are going to be home runs over the next 3 years. But if you don't really segment that out and get it into your mindset that that one you want to hold for that long, if it goes up 30, 40, 50% in the next 4 months, you might sell it. But you knew you wanted it for a long-term investment, so you shouldn't have sold it because 3 years later it might be up 300%. So really the first thing you want to do is segment out your cards to know what you want to be buying and selling and flipping in the short term versus what do you want to hold, and really kind of try and not think about in the near short term, because then you'll start to make moves that you didn't intend to make in the first place. But I will say this, you should always know all of your inventory. Either keep an Excel spreadsheet or write it all down on paper with the purchase price and all that stuff. Or once SlabStox Pro comes out, which is going to be very soon, we'll have an inventory manager in our program that you can always see the up-to-the-minute values. Then you'll know if your card has went up a ton and it's the time to sell. First thing you need to do is know your inventory, and now you can start to implement these different strategies. And I'm going to lay out some strategies for you, and then I'm going to combine them all together, which is basically the SlabStox method, as I like to call it. So the first strategy that you can go with is go with your gut. Regardless of if your card doubles, triples, quadruples in value, or drops in half by 50%, you just go with what your gut's telling you, with what you think might be right in the moment. That's not really taking into account anything else with risk, with do I have multiples, should I be holding some, selling some? It's really just, do I think that this card's going to go up more in value, or do I think it's going to drop more in value? And then you sell it or hold it based on what you think. So that's a strategy. Go with your gut. I would not recommend to do that for all your cards, or just look at everything as I'm just going to deal with what I think this card is going to do in the future. I recommend employing these next strategies I'm going to present here, and then doing some type of combination of them all. So number 2 would be sell some, hold some. I would recommend, I know that Nate's covering buying in the previous video, but just for myself, I would say if you really believe in something, always buy more than one. So you always have flexibility, so that if Trae Young goes and pops off and his cards triple in value in the span of 2 months, you can sell one of your Trae Young PSA 10s, but also hold your other Trae Young PSA 10 into the future because you really think he's going to do awesome. If you do that, you can mitigate some risk by selling one, capturing profit, lowering the overall cost of your other asset, and then you're pretty much going to be free riding your other Trae Young PSA 10 into the next 2 years. And, Trae Young might grow into an MVP caliber player. We'll see. Who knows? And that's not me saying that he will. That's just an example right here. So the sell some, hold some strategy is one I totally recommend. that will definitely help you mitigate your risk and also be sure that you're taking profit over time while being able to hold some of these cards of guys you really believe in or cards you really believe in. The next method is the return on investment method, the ROI method. This is where you can set up certain ROI percents over certain periods of time and say, if I hit this ROI percent over this amount of time, I will sell it no matter what it is. And I recommend not doing that. Instead, I recommend using the ROI method on a different basis per card. I would set different profit goals for each card. You can set a goal for a Trae Young PSA 10, which is probably different than a Tom Brady PSA 10 rookie from 2000, which Tom Brady, more of a long-term hold. You want to gain 25% over the next year or whatever. With Trae Young, you want to gain 25% over the next 2 weeks. And if you gain that, then you're satisfied and it's a cheap investment, whatnot. But basically with this, you sit down and you're like, okay, in the next 3 months, I want to achieve 30% on everything I classify as a short-term investment. And if I do, I sell it. And then you can do that for different levels of cards, long-term versus short-term, set different time periods. I think it's a really, really good idea to have goals in mind, but I also wouldn't stick to it as much as like, well, I really, really like Giannis to win the title next year, but my card's up 40% in the next 2 weeks or over the last 2 weeks, so I should sell it. I would do, set the ROI method and then be able to adjust and be flexible as you go. That is what I would say is a good way to implement that strategy into your selling strategy, overall selling strategy. So using those last 3 methods, there's something that you can use these 5 steps to do. First is assess your short-term versus long-term investments. Second is keep close track of your short-term investments. Always know what they are, what ROI you're looking for, all of that stuff, so that you can constantly be buying, selling, and shifting your investments around, building on that ROI over time. Let's keep in mind, if you sell a card and it goes up 300% in the next year, in that year span, you might have taken that profit you made and turned it into 700% ROI by being able to buy more. So that's why you should never think, well, if this card is going to be worth more in the future, I shouldn't sell it, because some people can't just keep on putting in disposable income into the card market. Some people need to use that profit to keep funneling their their journey, their building process in the sports card market, which is why that's a great strategy. Number 3 is mitigate your risk along the way by taking profit on cards if it's there. And if you can also hold some of other cards, then you get that wiggle room to where you can have some air in your bottom line. You can, if you go up 200% on a Trae Young PSA 10 and then you drop 30% on a Donovan Mitchell PSA 10, you're still up in the long run. It helps give you that wiggle room for a range of air. Number 4 would be use your gut. I think that this is a super important one, but it is not one to use only. You need to go with what you believe in and what you think is the right decision at the time. Normally that works out if it's for better in that certain situation, meaning maybe the card goes up in value, but then you learn from your mistake and you can learn and then you can do it the next time. I like to think that every single thing that you do in the sports card marketplace, if it's selling, if it's buying, if it's making connections, all is just culminating to this overall goal of learning and of becoming a better sports card collector and investor. I really think that's the formula right there. Number 5 is set your strategy. Make sure you know what you're doing. Do not go into an NBA season, an NBA playoffs, an NBA off season without thinking through a concrete strategy and setting your budget and knowing what profit goals you want to hit. Because if you don't do that, you're going to be lost. You're going to not really be sure what to do. You're going to be missing out on opportunities. You're going to be guessing, and it's not going to be good for your overall buying and selling strategy. This was the selling strategy SlabStox 101 video. I will see you in the next one. Thank you for watching this. Remember, this is super important, and I really, really suggest you guys to start introducing these selling strategies today.